Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Ask Someone Else with myself, Kaz from Property by Kazzy, talking to another industry expert as we do each and every, it's normally Sunday at 6 p.m, but right now we're on catch-up mode. And we got another guest today, which is going to be the anxious investor. So let me get him in. Whilst I do that, friends, add some family, add anybody else who thinks will get value out of today's session. How you doing, brother? You alright?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm good. I can see you've got very professional equipment. The camera quality is looking great. You've even got the background light of a professional, streamer.
It's a special occasion.
By any chance in your spare time?
It's a special occasion, man. Being on here, so I appreciate it.
Appreciate you getting your apologies that we didn't manage to catch you last week. I think we've had some back and forth between each other. But it is something that I wanted to do, somebody I wanted to speak to. So I'm excited to get you on. I'm drained. I've been doing these back-to-back 3 days on catch-up mode. But the energy, I know you're going to keep the energy levels high for us. So for those that don't know you, can we get a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just, you might know me as the anxious investor. So I'm a full-time property investor. Mm-hmm. Got into property probably for different reasons to other people. So I think, I'm not stereotyping it, but most people get into property to make money. My initial thought was the complete opposite. It was more like the time freedom part of it. I had no interest in property growing up. Never thought I'd be able to afford a house growing up from where I came from. Very humble beginnings. So all I ever knew was that academics. I went to grammar school, got the degree, the master's, the diploma, kind of did like a tick box exercise. Then you get to a point in life and you're like, what am I doing? Like, I've got no time. You're literally just working around the clock 24/7. So got into property around 25, fell back out of it, but I got back in 5 years ago full time, and I really kind of learnt the hard way. I probably made more mistakes than anyone you've had on this show. So I was literally just making mistakes after mistakes, very naively coming into this space, not realizing that, it's not as simple as a handshake, for example, or just listen to what somebody says. Like, there's a lot of discrepancies between people's actions and words, for example. So I was just making mistakes after mistakes. But thankfully, like 4 years on, I didn't get that financial freedom in 6 months. It took me like 4 years to get there. I got my time freedom back. And then with that, it allowed me to do the things I'm passionate about. So I do a lot of most of my days, like mental health based. We've got 2 successful podcasts. I've helped people with that. I've seen it in my family. I'm the anxious investor for a reason. I suffer with anxiety on a big scale. Even before I started this, I was like doing breathing exercises before we came on live kind of thing. But I also realized that even people coming into this space, there's a lot of anxiety around property investing as well. You're departing with huge sums of money. So indirectly, using kind of what I used to think was a fault of mine or something strange about myself, people kind of found it endearing or open and honest. And as a result of it, it kind of blew up the profile. Which again made me more anxious than even when I started.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's a lot of stuff you've spoken about there, but I'm sure just little bits that goes full circle. You being massively anxious and then creating a profile is like you're going in opposite directions of helping yourself. Absolutely. But firstly, I just wanted to say, I think sharing anything that we find difficult, particularly surrounding mental health and just like personal well-being, is always, particularly from a man as well, often is a lot harder to be transparent and honest with. So big up you 10 times for actually sharing that, because I'm sure you see all the people that you help, but there'll be so many people that you don't even know that you've helped and touched on a daily basis. That so I'm sure they appreciate you a lot. So for those that haven't said thank you, let me say thank you.
I appreciate you
on their behalf. In terms of how I think we'll sort of phrase today, and I think I want to hear your story. And then I also want other people to have the opportunity to ask you questions. So if you do have any questions, sorry, your name is
Aaron.
Aaron. Okay, so you've gone with the alliteration, like Aaron the Anxious.
It wasn't planned. It wasn't.
Okay, it was a happy coincidence. Fair enough. But yeah, for those that do want to ask Aaron questions, please make sure you use the question boxes. We are going to get to those questions later on. To start with, we're just going to kind of have a chat because I'm going to be selfish. I've got some questions that I want to ask. I also want to ask how to get my setup looking so clean. That's going to be one of them.
This took me 18 months. 18 months.
All right, listen, don't worry. I've got big plans. So we're renovating at the moment. We're planning to move to. And I'm going to have my gaming / content / podcast room. So we're going to try and get a balance of everything. But I just want to, before we get onto the questions, I kind of want to unpack some of the stuff you said, because I would say I'm a little bit socially awkward. I wouldn't say I'm fully anxious, but I feel very comfortable around people that I like and that I know. But you put me in a party and my go-to is to find a corner where I can stand, and I'm more than happy to be there, but I just want to observe what's going on. I'm not really trying to interact until I feel comfortable. And I definitely think the idea of it's a weird space, because putting yourself out there means way more people are gonna want to talk to you and gonna want to interact with you for all the right reasons, but it also can be sort of counterproductive as well for your own. So how have you found that, and how have you kind of managed?
Yeah, it's a great point. That was probably my biggest hurdle when I started property. So the first thing they tell you is tell everyone what you do. You know, go to networking events, I did all that stuff. Every networking event, I was paying.
Did you do
courses. It? Yeah, I did everything.
I've been to 2. I went to my second, in like 8 years, I've been to my second one.
I felt like I had to do it because I didn't know any better, if that makes sense. I've not been there for like 2 or 3 years.
But I mean, in terms of like not, because my business partner used to try and force me to go there and like we have to make connections.
Yeah.
And especially when I wasn't on Instagram or wasn't doing anything, the idea of going to these networking events where you didn't really know that you were doing anything of value to anybody, and them telling you to, and obviously at some networking events, there's a lot of like sort of pissing competitions in terms of I do this, I do that, or I do this. And then you're going there thinking, well, I'm just trying to start out and meet some people and I don't really do anything yet. Like, literally, the first one I went to, I'll be honest with you, I just sat there with my business cards in my pocket. I just, again, tried to find a happy corner and just observe. Wait, did you manage to actually get out there and start talking to people?
I was the same as you. I mean, I remember printing like 2,000 business cards, right? I had this dream that I'm going to become like an extrovert. I'm a natural introvert. That's where I get my energy. So I used to go, and I was always that guy in the back of the class kind of thing, sitting in there. So one thing I'll always try and do, and I'd advise this to anyone, is I believe we can become good or great over a long enough period of time if you put the work in, right? So my thing was, I don't have to have that narrative of being a shy person my whole life. You know, it's crippled me to a certain point. I need to change, because the reason I need to change is I need to change my wife's life. I need to change my parents' life and my siblings' life. So I was always having to make myself uncomfortable in that situation. So I did hypnotherapy. I was like reading all the books. I was trying like massively, but I still struggle. I would still be that person in the corner looking for another loner to try and catch eye contact with, hoping they'd come over.
You didn't find me. Where were you when I needed you?
Man. You only went to 2.
I know. But I mean, that's what I really liked about your page. Obviously, that you are very transparent. You have kind of, obviously your name in itself plays on the difficulties that you found, just even away from property, because we're going to get onto property. But I found in many respects, I find this conversation more interesting, because the motivation, the drivers are often maybe what people resonate with more so than the end goal, because somebody can want to get into property or crypto or trading or all sorts of things, but have these same issues. And I think it's the drivers and the personality things that are often, you know, of more value to a lot of people. But I think the idea of you quickly identifying that, you know, you are aware of, you almost did like a SWOT analysis of yourself, in that, okay, so I know what my weaknesses are. How can what you've done is basically say, okay, how can I play on these to turn these potential weaknesses into opportunities? How can I turn these, you know what I mean, these threats into strengths, etc., and turn it around? Which I think is really good. And obviously you said you had a motivation from family. So you said your first property you bought was around 10 years ago, but it wasn't until sort of 5 years after that you really sort of geared things up in properties. Let's talk about that first property that you bought.
Yeah, so basically growing up, we were financially really poor. Now, I didn't know what that meant because I had everything growing up, like the greatest upbringing. I wouldn't change it for the world. But it was only until you start seeing, like, you know, your mom's always working 90 hours a week, or she's always in debt, for example. And we had this really bad kind of connotation around money that, you know, you got to be evil to get money, or you know, money is the root of all evil, those kind of things, or good people don't get it. But because I was an academic, I was able to kind of at least level myself up in terms of a pay scale. So I've been working since I was 15. When I graduated in construction project management. Had no idea what it was at the time. It wasn't linked to going into property, but somehow it's kind of helped out. And then when I graduated, I had a good, well-paying job. So I was earning a lot more than I knew what to do with, or any kind of money that my parents had ever seen. So at this point, I'm in London, and I've moved to West London. I'm living the high life. I was like getting bottle service every weekend, designer clothes. I was like, I'd walk to my car and jump in like a designer shop and just buy something because I'd never had it before. And I was like really valuing like the materialistic things. But subsequently, at the same time, that didn't last too long. That lasted, 6 months, and you get bored of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then my parents were struggling, so I used to send them money back home, like for about 12 months. I was sending like whatever's left in my paycheck. But little did I know, my mum was actually saving that for me because she knew I was reckless at this point. I had kind of just been like trying to spend my salary as quick as possible.
Right. So mums know best. Always mums know best. Even when you don't know, mums know.
They always know best. So one day I come home on a weekend and she's like, you need to sort your life out a little bit, and we're going to go buy a house. Like, it was always our dream growing up, because we were living like with my grandparents, and we was always having to lend money off people, for example, to get ahead. And it was like, you're in a position now where you can go buy a house and change the fortunes moving forward. So I went for 2 viewings. The second viewing, I just bought the house. I didn't negotiate. I didn't do nothing. Like, I made so many mistakes, and it was a motivated seller at that point. Bought this house, put it on a repayment, went back to London, carried on working, kept it for about 18 months. And then I still didn't understand property at this point. So I didn't understand that. I mean, that house now is worth like another £100,000 on top of what it is. It was like a 3-bed semi-detached link house. And I wish I'd kept it. And that's always like, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, why did I sell that? But I sold it again because I got married. My wife wanted a brand new house. I was like, we'll sell this. We'll just buy a brand new house. And that was kind of my story. And then it was only afterwards, just segueing ever so slightly, when we had a death in the family. And this was actually when my story of going full-time into property happened. And I'm sitting with my cousin, and I'm now the academically smart one in my family. I've done everything, straight A's, everything. But I'm still not happy. I'm still not where I need to be to like change the fortunes of my own life and my family's. And my cousin's sitting there, and he got married at 18. And I thought, like, this guy isn't academically smart, right? But what he was doing was buying properties. And the guy had a portfolio back when you can get over 100% mortgages, for example. You get day one refinance.
Mortgage Express kind of day.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so he had tons of those. And what he had actually done, so my uncle passed away from cancer, but he was able to retire 6 months prior to that and spend time with him. And then, I don't know, something just clicked right there and then, that if God forbid that ever happens to my parents or my wife or my loved ones, I need that 6 months. I don't want my employee to be like, you've got 2 weeks of annual leave and then unpaid leave, and all that negotiation with them. Yeah. And that really sparked something in me. And that's what I thought. Well, obviously I kicked myself for selling that property, but I was like, I need to learn the way he's learned it. And then literally I went full throttle into it. I was working 7 days a week, and that's when like my journey started to get me to where I am today.
I think that's really, and I think for a lot of people that should probably help quite a lot, just like, because sometimes you can't just change overnight. But everybody has a catalyst. Everybody has something that's their spark to be like, okay, I'm going to use that as the impetus to really get out there and go now. Like, because there's been times, if you, I guess, were to liken it to wanting to start a new diet or wanting to start in the gym, if you just say, I want to start because my friend started, you'll start and you'll stop and you'll go back and you'll start and stop. And it's like, everything has to be the right time for you. So I think the idea of what you're saying about, just it being the right time, and you talking about also that you did it, because sometimes even timing is also very key, because even if that conversation with your cousin, even though you had that conversation, if maybe you hadn't have gone out there beforehand and blown the money on designer clothes and expensive champagne and other very materialistic stuff, maybe you wouldn't have valued what he was saying as much, because you would still felt personally that you hadn't done certain things.
Absolutely.
So I think for those also that are looking at, I've done this wrong and that wrong, like sometimes those mistakes are they're just learning curves. They're actually steps, and they're part of your foundation that you can build off.
Absolutely, man.
Another thing that I thought was interesting that you touched on as well was the idea of your parents kind of putting your idea into, or as a general conception amongst quote unquote working class, that you know, there's money is bad, or not money is bad, but there's a negative connotation involved in making money. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I think a lot of that comes from almost personally trying to justify your own position, or kind of trying to make yourself feel a little bit better, or a little bit more comfortable. Like, we're not like those. They only care about money. That's why they've got it. And don't get me wrong, there are loads of people that have gone out there and gotten money the wrong way and what have you. But I do think, you know, if we can kind of take ego out of it sometimes, that there's loads of great people that have made a load of money and helped a load of people, and we shouldn't necessarily like feel like I have to just pretend like I don't want money to make myself feel better. You can just, you know, it may be a long way away, and it may be really far out there on the horizon, but you can make it. It's just taking those little steps on a daily basis to slowly improve standard of living, slowly improve your own. And it might not necessarily be like in the same way you spoke, it might not necessarily be directly you that always does something. But the impact that you have, and the impact that your mum had through her mentality, like, although that she was saying, oh, you know, like potentially money's bad, or like having money, you know, there's a lot of bad things around it. Like the fact that she still saw the value of money and allowed you to save meant that she was able to give back to you, which went full circle for you to give back to her. And I think sometimes we just have to not get caught up in this social media. Everybody only sees the winning. Everybody only sees the good stuff. Everybody only sees the positives. Nobody has any down days. Nobody's ever sad. Nobody ever does anything wrong. Nobody ever takes a step backwards. And I think that's really important that you've touched on. It's funny because we have these conversations and they can go anywhere. And I kind of knew this one was going to be a little bit different, but I'm still really enjoying it. And I hope that for those obviously that have got logged in hoping to ask about BRRR and rent to rent, it's coming, because I promise you, what is your podcast is called Find Your Voice Podcast.
That's correct.
And obviously, if you're not already, make sure you go and follow the Anxious Investor on Instagram and YouTube. Reason being is, I think he does loads of really good, similar to the guys we had on yesterday, Bricks with Tips, loads of really good bite-sized, digestible pieces of content. And I promise you, I give credit where credit is due. It's been on my to-do list for about 3 months. I sent my videographer for some of your videos, and I was like, we need to do more videos like this. Like, not so much to say I just want to take your content, but just the fact that I feel like not everybody has the time to, you know, take in an hour-long video about rent to rent, but a little bite-sized video anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes can allow people to actually kind of take something in, get the keys, get the little, like, sort of dip their toe in the water and see, maybe is this vocation right for me? So if you haven't already, make sure you go and follow, make sure you go and subscribe to all the different platforms. I promise you, watch a couple of videos and you'll be hooked. I've watched loads of great ones. And even a lot of your questions that you're going to ask today, there's more in-depth, more sort of deep dives into those questions like that we're going to have around, like, why to buy a property, what's your portfolio, like what mistakes have you made, what's BRRR, what's rent to rent, like the ideas around mentoring and advice. So many good topics. So make sure you do go and subscribe and do go and follow him.
Thank you, man.
No problem. So let's get into when you started. Like, we've spoken about the motivations, we've spoken about your first purchase, and then we've spoken about what was potentially the turning point. So you then realized you want to build a property portfolio, not primarily for money, but obviously money gives you freedom and gives you time, which was your driver. So what was your strategy that you went to implement, and how did you learn about that strategy?
Yeah, perfect. Can I just quickly segue backwards? I know it's your show, but you made a really good point about the money stuff, and it resonated with me, because I think there is a tendency that, like, from my parents, that they had that thought process about money being but I think one thing that's important for anyone listening as well, it's about exposure. So my parents have never seen anyone make money, let's say, the right way, or without doing something a little bit on the wrong side of the law. So they had no exposure to it. And I think even myself now, being exposed around people who are making money in a legitimate way, in a good way, by just working hard, it's opened up my eyes and it's opened up my parents' eyes. Whereas with my mom, she was working 90 hours a week, but not moving forward in life. So for her, it was like, I have to be doing something different in order to get forward in life. So I think exposure is key. And that's the great thing with social media. You can expose yourself and your mind to great minds out there who are doing the things you want to do. And then, you know, if you look far back enough, you'll see the blueprint of success for everyone. But yeah, I just want to add that. I thought it was a great point.
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate that. Cool. Appreciate that. So yes, we were saying basically, you realized like what you wanted to do. You realized what the drivers were, and I think the other key thing you realize is you realize what you wanted, because a lot of people, when they say they want to start investing in property, want everything. They want cash flow, they want income, they want something they can hold, they want something they can sell, they want, you know what I mean? They want a bit of everything. But you quickly identified, you know, that you wanted something that was going to give you freedom. So ideally you wanted to replace an income. So what strategies did you employ? How did you learn about it? And then how did you go to execute it?
So I did the standard thing. I joined a course. So I spent stupid money on a course. And in hindsight, I kicked myself for that. But again, it's a lesson learned. It's a valuable lesson learned. So I joined this course and they give you all these fancy scenarios of strategies, you know, rent to rent, deal sourcing, you know, BRRs, buy to lets, HMOs. And it was at that point I was like, I can't spread myself too thin. I need to literally just focus on one. What's going to be the best one at this point? Now I just got married, so the wife's obviously married me thinking, you know, this guy's bringing in a good salary, and I've just been like, nah, scrap that. I'm going full time into property. And one thing I wouldn't advise anyone, again, another mistake, is just give up your job. So on that course that I went to, they advise that you don't need money to get into property, for example, or you don't need a salary. So when I started, it was initially with flips. So I went further up north to Stoke, where like you can get houses for £40,000. And I thought I'd rather make a £40,000 mistake than a 150 or a £200,000 mistake. But what I didn't realize was that by having two exit strategies, so if it never flipped, I'd refinance it. I'd need some income, whether that's, you know, £10,000, 11,000 or 25, which, you know, most lenders have. That I needed something, but the course people didn't tell me this. So at this point, you know, I've just completely just handed my notice in on the Monday saying I'm on a new venture, and then I've started buying properties unencumbered, so I had a bit of savings, and then come to the point I couldn't sell it, and I was like, okay, I need to refinance it. Nobody's looking at me because I'm just a random guy with just a bit of money in the account, essentially. And
I think for courses, like I said, like I had a conversation recently where people said, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And I wasn't teaching courses. I was just asking a question and in response to them more holistically. And I think there's some courses out there that give people exactly what they want. Like some people want that Wolf of Wall Street, like, and they need to be charged up, fired up. They just need the energy to get out of bed and go and get it, and they provide great information for them. Some people are a bit more analytical. They want a lot more detail. They want that blueprint, but with also the how-tos and more specifics. And there are courses like that there for people, but I think particularly if you are looking to get into a course or mentorship, make sure the type of course that you're going to embark on is going to fit the type of learner that you are. And I think that would probably be, because there are some good courses out there with like real detail, but there's also some courses out there that are really motivational and are more kind of top level about attitude and going out there and get it, and sales tactics, as opposed to here's a specific spreadsheet that you should use, and here's how you do your breakdown, and here's how you analyze this per square meter. So that's only one thing. I've spoken about courses. I feel like I need to give the fair before, of course, people come after me again with the pitchforks and the But okay. So you started. You went on some courses, and you started first. Sort of, you said, okay, do you know what? Let me buy somewhere that's affordable. But the kind of, so your lesson from that was obviously, and there are different mortgage products, and there are some things you can get without an income, but interest rates are going to be a lot higher if you want to, you know what I mean, if you want to sell, you're going to have a way small pool of buyers as well, potentially. So that was kind of your first lesson. And away from teaching you what that taught you about the specific project, I guess, did that give you any teachings in the way you needed to learn about property, or the way you wanted to kind of manage what you did next from there?
So again, I was so naive, and like this is what I try and give like the audience who follow me. I thought I needed another course to stop me from making those mistakes again. And what I realized is you can do every single course in the world, but when you buy a new property, whether it's a renovation, you know, conversion or whatever, that's going to pose its own problems. Like I've not done one deal that's exactly the same as the other one. There's always something completely different. And then it's your ability to, how quick can I solve this problem, or who can I bring in to help me solve this problem? Essentially, like, surround yourself with good people. So again, I went on this other course. I paid a little bit extra for like a mentorship. And what I essentially realized is, it is that top level mindset kind of stuff. You know, that fluffy, generic stuff, like start at the end, work backwards, you know, be positive, toxic positivity and stuff. And I'm like, I don't need to be motivated. I'm already motivated. My wife's going to work and I ain't bringing an income in. I'm already motivated. I'm up before her and I'm asleep there. I need to make money. I need to know what am I missing here? Like, how do I add value to this property substantially in order to make enough money? So I started understanding, I started doing a lot of reading again. And luckily I had people in my network who, I started telling people what I was doing. So I started documenting my journey a little bit on Facebook as the king of mistakes. That was actually like my first kind of name, because I was just making mistakes left, right and center. I was losing like £8,000 off a builder. My house was getting broken into. I had the wrong insurance, for example. So essentially, as I was documenting this, people were almost warming towards me as if like they were feeling sorry for me and they were connecting with me. And what they were doing was giving me just advice. So I'd kind of surrounding myself with people, and on specific projects, I'd simply go out and say, guys, I'm struggling here. Like, I was never afraid to ask. And even now, like, I'm an avid learner. I still feel like a student in this game. Like 10 years in and out of it, I'm learning stuff every single day. Like, I never want to consider myself as the go-to guy. It's just, again, it's just based on my perspective and my experience. So I started surrounding myself with people. Then I learned about the BRRR model, which for me was a game changer, because I only had a certain amount of money. And I was like, if I mess up one or two flips, that's not only the time and the opportunity cost of that, I need to start bringing in some income as well. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that I could recycle it essentially as well and go again, like, that's awesome. So I actually pivoted very quickly into that. And I thought, why not hold a portfolio, and that way I can get myself out of work. And then at this point, simultaneously, the goal was to get my wife out of work. So thankfully now she works 1 day a week, whereas she was having to work 5 days a week at that point. So yeah, I kind of transitioned into that. And then I literally learned, I used to write down my mistakes. So I had like this spreadsheet and there was like hundreds and hundreds of mistakes. And then it was like, I'm not making this mistake again, because then it's a me problem, right? So like one of them was like, I would just, they'll be like, the builder would be like, I need some materials. And I'd be like, yeah, cool. Go get what you want. And I'd just pay for it. But I wasn't really like monitoring like how much plaster he's using, or, you know, how much
you weren't checking if on that same receipt it said like £50 like blade for his.
Exactly. Like, I kicked myself, because for people watching this, they're going to be like, this guy is stupid. But what I was very trusting and quite naive, and just thinking that, you know, my dad always taught me, when you shake someone's hand, like, your word should mean everything. Like, integrity to me, it's not just something you say in a caption. It's how you act on a daily basis. So when I went seeing that reciprocated, it was blowing my mind. I was like, shit. Then I was like, contracts, get everything in place. Now I'm so meticulous with separating friends from a business box that everything is that down the line.
Processes streamlined.
But I hate that, because I don't like conflict. I don't like awkward conversations, but you have to have that in this business, because when things are going well, everyone's best friends with everyone. But as projects, especially when you're JVing, for example, things go wrong. You know, time scales, cost, and that's where you get a lot of difficulties. So if you haven't got that piece of paper that kind of outlines all your expectations, for example, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So, you know, I learned that the hard way. But then I did start getting better, because rather than project managing on my phone and be like FaceTime while I'm sitting at home or going to the gym, I was on site every single day in the morning before they come up. Why haven't you turned up on time, for example? And I was doing stage payments, and I was really meticulous with, I used to know exactly how much plaster I needed. And I remember one of my refurbs, pre-starting the refurb for a BRR project, I quoted myself that I was going to spend 15,550 quid. And I was 50 quid off at the end of the whole project, 6 months. And that was like one of my proudest moments, from being a sucker like a year ago to actually getting it bang on right. And then that obviously gives me confidence in the ability that, okay, now I can go out there. I'm understanding this game. I did a few more things on the side. I'm getting better each time. Now I can use other people's money. And I'd probably say my biggest skill set in this game isn't that I'm great at everything. I can project manage. That's obviously my degree. That's what I do. I get on with people. I can motivate people. But my biggest skill is raising finance. So then I was able to raise so much finance that I could technically take my portfolio or goals anywhere I wanted.
No, that's a lot of interesting stuff that you touched on. I think I'm trying to think where to start with it. I think firstly, just going to site every day. I think for a lot of people that the idea of property investment like is, oh, well, I'm just going to buy a property and the builders are going to run it. I'm just going to be at the gym. I'm going to be chilling. I'm going to be in Barbados relaxing, and they're just going to deliver me an A1 project. And all I'm going to do is phone up and pay them when they tell me I need to. I mean, it sounds great, and it does work like that 1 out of 100 times. Absolutely. But generally speaking, particularly when you're working from the beginning, you need to be on site. The other thing you said is asking why. That is like my favorite thing. If anybody asks me, oh, we need to do X, we need to do Y, we need to do Z, I'm going back to why. Because I might not know exactly what they're talking about, especially at the beginning. But if they've told me that we can't use a flitch beam and we've got to use this RSJ and we have to use X, Y, or Z, and this is why we have to do it, I can take their answer and I can go away, do some research and come back and maybe say, look, I can go, like you said, also surrounding yourself with good people means when you ask why, you can now take that why, take that information to other people that know better and be like, look, this is what they proposed to me. What do you reckon? So there's two good things. Firstly, you get a second opinion. Secondly, when you go back to the builder the following morning and say, oh, in regards to what you said yesterday about this, haven't you considered this as an option from what you got from somebody else? That idea of you actually knowing your stuff means that they're a lot less likely to try and pull the wool over your eyes in the future because you've asked why, you've given them, you know, a technical response. So I would say, particularly when it comes to dealing with trades or, you know, just dealing with, it could be dealing with your accountant, it could be dealing with a financial advisor, ask why, get a second opinion, go back to them. It doesn't have to be immediately. You don't have to give them a response straight away because the good thing about being your own boss is you work on your own time frames. And I think that's really important that you touched on that.
Advice,
I'm lost and you said a lot and there's a lot of stuff I wanted to mention, but I think so if you started doing BRRR and you spoke, that was it. That was the other point before I move on. Integrity, because for me that's something why I kind of had a gripe with some courses or some educators was because behind integrity, and it's like, you know, that there's a point where you have to look at what you're delivering and make sure there's value for money about what you're delivering. And even in this property space, when some people ask me, oh, you've been doing this for 10 years, like not 10 years, you've been doing it for 10 years, I've been doing it for 8 years. Like, why haven't you gone bigger? Why are you not doing like 20 units or larger units, or, you know, you can raise all this money? Like, I can honestly say, like, I've turned down, like, I think 2017, I think I turned down £2 million from a private investor because I didn't feel like I was personally ready to deliver the type of project they wanted me to deliver for them. And I wouldn't take that risk with my money, so I wasn't ready to take that risk with somebody else's money, even though it was being offered to me and technically it was free money. And if I make money, great. If I don't, I can't lose anything, because for me, it's all about integrity. And whether it's you're building a brand or just your personal name on Instagram, off Instagram, like you said, like if you come from a family background of integrity where your name, your word is your bond is very important, it just means a lot more to you. And even beyond the money and beyond personal growth, it means a lot more to you in regards to how you sleep at night and how you feel as a person. So I think, I like, you know, that you touched on the integrity issues.
100%. And even just your reputation is your like family's reputation. Like my dad's well known. Like anyone in the West Midlands knows who my dad is. So everything I do, I'm also keeping his respect intact as well. And you touched about integrity there. That's something that I see a lot of people, they'll come fresh off a course looking to raise finance. I'm like, build your skill set up first, because you're paying with somebody's money. And even if you've done a course, you can still make a lot of mistakes. Even if you've got a mentor, you can still make a lot of mistakes. Don't play with somebody else's money. And I've been in that situation where I had to sell my house and I had to move in with the in-laws to pay an investor back because my JV partner just went crazy kind of thing, as if like he wasn't going to pay back the debt. And I remember this and I was struggling because I was like, he's also somebody in our space, like in the online property. And I was thinking, what's going on here? Like, where's your integrity? Like online, you're a completely different person. Here, we need to pay an investor back. What are you going to do about it? I can't do nothing about it. So then I'm sitting there thinking, well, I need to do something about it. So even to the point where I literally sold my house, sold it quick time. So I could have made more, obviously, if I kept it on the market. And I've just moved in because I'm like, I'd rather be homeless than not pay somebody back. And then that set me back a little bit in terms of time. But at the end of the day, I've still got my respect intact. You know, that was a good friend of mine.
That connection, because that same person that like I turned money down from, and I explained to them why I did.
Yeah.
I know I can call them, and I can probably call them for a lot more money now because they've seen I've done a lot more. So as and when, I think your time is your time, and if you try and rush it or try and force it or try and push the issue where maybe you don't need to, you can end up kind of sort of counteracting your own blessings or your own things that, you know, could happen for you in the long term. So I think that's really important for somebody who's just thinking like, should I try and cut the corners? Should I chance it? Should I whatever? Like, just, you know what I mean? If you're doing it right, your time will come. So just keep working. Sorry for those. We're going to go on to questions. We are going to get some questions now, though.
Cool.
So yeah, if you do have any questions, make sure you use the question box. We've got a few already. Let me see. So this, I think you've partly asked this, but we'll touch on this quickly. We'll try and get through as many. I cannot read. You're going to have to help me with this. Read names. I can't read Instagram.
Oh man, I'm terrible.
One stop, someone finishes. I want to say Ibracadabra.
Ibracadabra, yeah, I'm thinking.
Ibracadabra.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Ibracadabra said, what were your inspirations regarding property development?
So for myself, when I first started, it was always, they tell you to set a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal. And I just set myself a 10-year goal of building a house. So that was actually where I'm currently at in this position now. So we're going to be building over 20 units across 2 sites. Nice. But how I got there, I literally did it incrementally. Obviously, I can look back now and connect the dots. You know, I started with a £40,000 house, then a £96,000 house, and 140,000. Like everything was incrementally done because I knew I was making mistakes on every step, and I couldn't go from here to here because that mistake would, that's it, take me out of the game. I would no longer be, you know, the anxious investor. I'd just be some guy who's broke and I owe money to creditors, for example. So I always had like a blueprint, but however long it took, that didn't bother me as well. I think a lot of people, we see these things on like social media where somebody's done something in X amount of time, or people tell you can do it in 6. Don't worry too much about the time because, like you said, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. Because for some of us, we're going to hit roadblocks. We're going to hit certain stumbles across the road. And for myself, you know, I hit those, but I'm so grateful for those that now, when I'm building these 20+ units, I'm so confident that this is probably the one I feel more confident about. And we're talking millions in terms of our GDV. But I've set myself up with the best possible team that I don't even have like 1% where I'm doubting anyone within my team, whereas normally you have that inkling. So yeah, my main aspirations, obviously, growing up, we didn't even think we'd get a house. And then it was always like, well, if I'm going to get into this, how cool would it be in 10 years if I can actually build a house that I can be like, I created this. So yeah, I'm there now. That's kind of a little bit of a long-winded story there.
No, but it's a good answer. And for those that wondered about that, because like I said, I've watched the videos that want to know from how did you get from the 40,000 to the 80,000 to the 100,000. You've got a good video kind of explaining your development trajectory. And for those that are on their current journey, I think I put a post out sort of explaining my story, and it was like, look, nobody's progression is a straight line like this. Everybody's is gonna look like this. It's gonna be ups and downs, and nobody's looks the same. So don't worry if you've taken a step back or somebody else is taking a step forward. Your journey is different. You just got to embrace it and enjoy the journey as well as your sort of destination where you're trying to get to. Okay, let's grab another question now. Some questions I don't necessarily, let me just answer this because I don't know the answer to this. So I'm going to ask you this. And Dean C, 17, has asked, do you mentor?
So this is funny. So I tried not to mentor in terms of when I got into this space, it was never like, how much money can I potentially get out of this? It's how quickly can I get my time freedom back? And when I have time free, I want to do like, I just want to sit there or be around like, you know, my siblings or my family or my wife, for example. So when it comes to stuff like mentoring and stuff, it's essentially taking me away from the things that I love to do, if that makes sense. But then at the same time, I also realize the value of it and obviously the financial benefits as well. You know, if you're offering a service and it's worth it, then obviously you should do that. So cut a long story short, I literally work with like 3 or 4 people on like a monthly basis. Some of them are like close friends that I've just known for ages and they need that next step up, but it's not something that I actively go out there. I'm like, you know, I've got like last 10 bookings if you want to come in and kind of, it's always on a kind of a case by case basis as well. And I know people say that, but it's generally like, I believe this is why I have sometimes a gripe with certain courses. The course could be great, but it depends on your starting resource. So if your resources when you start, for example, are you've got £100,000 as opposed to a person over here who has £500, but he's in bad credit. That's a completely different starting point. So when they take that course, this guy might excel, and then it's like the course is great, but actually we need to account for this person. So generally what I'd do is I'd sit with someone and I'd just try and advise them, maybe like, you know, a consultation. I prefer consultations because that way there's a KPI to that. Essentially, you're getting something out of it. There's no fluff or nothing with it. So I'll give them a kind of blueprint. Then it's like, go away and do this. And then if you feel like you need me again, we can book in another session. That's how I prefer to do it. And that way I can kind of manage my time rather than consistently sitting with someone and hand holding somebody's journey as well. So maybe I'll look into it in the future, but at the minute I'm just enjoying like free time. You know, I'm clocking Netflix, and I know we shouldn't talk about things like that, but it's like,
no, listen,
I've worked so hard to get to where I get to.
I've got weeks on Call of Duty Warzone right now.
There you go.
So, but everybody's got to have an escape, like, you know, you do to get away and to focus and to recharge and get your energies back. For me, I think I spoke about this. I don't mentor, just because at the moment I don't feel like I could deliver the level of service that I'd want to. That being said, I've mentored one person in my life. Shout out Luke from Luke's Properties. He's smashing it now, doing really well in BRR and Rent to Rent. But that was a friend of mine who I mentored because he just wouldn't go away and just kept. And every time I was like, no, you try and fob somebody off. They're like, oh yeah, like I want to know about this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is whatever. And they're like, right, I've learned all of that and I've read all of that. And they come back again. They're like, right, so how do you do this? You're like, yeah, all right, you just do this. And so it was kind of more that relationship with somebody that I know rather than mentoring. Like you, I do phone consultations. They're not cheap for me personally. They're not expensive in regards to how I value my time, but they're not cheap either. But just like you said, they're £140 for an hour. So what I do is I do pre-qualification first. Because if somebody just wants to ask me the question, like I'm 18 years old, like, can you give me tips on how to get into property? I say, yeah, ask someone else. I've done 36 episodes. That's over 30 hours worth of content. Go and watch those and come back to me, because chances are like 9 out of 10 of your questions might be answered in those. But again, for somebody who's like, look, I'm looking at buying a property at auction. I don't really understand auctions. I want a full explanation of how to buy at auctions along with some deal analysis. I say, okay, no problem. Sit down. And it's more just because I try and answer as many people's questions as possible, but also, like you, I need my time as well. So if I was to answer everybody's questions for free, I wouldn't have any time to put the content out. I wouldn't have any time to offer on any properties, to view any properties. So it's finding that balance. But long term, I think something that I want to start doing is, particularly for like those under 20, maybe just doing some free like little seminar days where we go and we kind of work with a local space who are happy to gift us a space, and we'll get some other people in and just do something like a little workshop, maybe some site visits and stuff like that. For those that just want an idea of, is property right for them? Because a lot of people might do a little bit and realize this is really stressful, and this is a lot of hours and this is loads of work, and I think I'd rather do something else. So just that's my idea behind it. Let's try and get a couple, because I've actually got to get to football at 7 o'clock to just perform very badly. But I think it's important to run around and get the lungs working. Of course. Let me pick a good question. If there's any question that people like in the question box as well. Some people love a clickbait question trying to advertise their cryptocurrency as well.
I see that. I see a lot of
that. Okay, I think this is a good one. What qualities / numbers are you looking for when doing a joint venture with a firm or an individual? Quite like that question.
Okay, so qualities, again, we've touched on it earlier. It's just like integrity. It's about that person. You need to be able to get on with that person, but you also need to be realistic, not to just jump into bed with like somebody who's just a good laugh or somebody you can have a crack with. It has to be that level of seriousness as well. And then obviously it depends on the type of JV. So is it somebody just purely financing it, or is it somebody who's going to be working with you day in, day out? And if they're working with you day in, day out, you want someone who kind of complements your skills. There's no point two of you being the same. So like my business partner is completely opposite to myself. I see myself as my brain is over, it's going on all the time. Maybe that's part of the anxiety. I'm very creative. I'm very like forward thinking, but I'm not organized. You look at my desk, it's an absolute mess. Whereas he's like structured. I'll have a conversation with him and he'll give me minutes, like kind of at the end of it. And that helps me. It helps me actually streamline my process, but then at the same time, I can get all my thoughts out. So
that's super funny. That's literally like it parodies like my previous. I'm not in the business before, but a rent-to-rent business that I co-founded. same thing. Like we would have a conversation afterwards. He'd send me action points and the minutes meetings, and like I would just like I'm just thinking about 1,000 things, and every day I've got a new idea. Like, I'm like, all right, so do you know what? I'm thinking like, okay, I want to write a kid's book, set up a program, do some mentoring, buy this house. I need to do this. Like everything's happening at once with no idea of how to do it. So I think that having somebody who complements your skill set is key. I think what you said about that balance between somebody you can get on with, but also not just somebody that you get on with, somebody who you've seen their strengths and they complement yours. Because my business partner, for example, was somebody that I didn't have a personal relationship with ahead of kind of having a conversation around what we're both trying to achieve in business, and realized there was like, some alignment there, and got cracking from there. I definitely think your answer was spot on in regards to that. Let's see if we've got time for one more sneaky question. Answer those. Okay, I just like this question because I get asked this randomly a lot as well. And for me, I have a very particular answer, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. So, WAR, I think I'm going to say that's like Wa Youssef with no vowels, has asked, at some point, do you intend to finish your mortgage or continue to max out, refinance and go again?
So I'm always maxing out refinancing, essentially, at the minute. Again, cash flow. I buy properties for cash flow, just to, obviously, like I mentioned, the freedom aspect of it. I think if I get to that stage where I've got more money than sense and I don't know what to do with it, and I'm just paying interest for no reason, I'd probably bring down the debt. So at the minute, my highest is 75%. I try and do 70% loan to value. I'd probably bring it down to about 60%. But again, it depends on the market and the economics. So for me, interest rates are so cheap, you might as well leverage that. You're not going to get a cheaper loan than that. So it makes more financial sense to be able to then pull that money out and do something else with it. Like by refinancing, I've been able to do things like, for example, a holiday or start my own business, for example, with the wife, for example. So it's given me other opportunities. But again, it depends on my time in the future. But at the minute, I think I'd always refinance, obviously depending on the rental coverage and stuff that you get from it. I don't get fixated on the whole needing to pay your mortgage down. It's just a vehicle for me to do what I want to do. What's your answer for that?
Yeah, no, mine is very much the same. Like if I got to a point where I had more money than I knew how to invest, then I would buy in cash, because at the end of the day, that interest is just an expense. However, I believe that I have the ability to, with the money that I withdraw, if I withdraw £50,000, for the additional interest I'd be paying over that year's basis, if I annualize what I could do with that £50,000, I believe that I could make that money work harder than the interest I'd be paying. So effectively, it's a balance that this is how much you pay, but if you can make this much, your gap is in here, and this is your profit between what you've made from refinancing. Also, I guess the other side of it is, if I got to the point where I didn't want to grow anymore, I didn't have an interest in buying and dealing with business, and literally was just effectively was in almost like that wealth preservation mode away from wealth creation. Potentially at that point, I may sort of gear downwards and look to reduce my monthly payments, increase income, and just sort of do something like that. But again, it really depends on personal circumstance. But I would say for most people, most people are looking at it like this way. Look, it'd be great to say, look, let's say you're talking in London, I own this flat outright and it's worth £300,000. I have no debt. I literally am worth that £300,000 because I have I don't owe anybody else money. However, what could you do with that £300,000? Because on a 75% loan to value at £300,000, your mortgage might be, I don't know, £700-800 a month. So over the course of a year, that's costing you £8,000-9,000 for the year. Off, effectively sort of we might have lost the anxious investor. Are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, was that me?
I don't know. I don't. It was either you or
sorry.
me. But
Okay.
your back is the main thing anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just talking briefly about it, and it basically is echoing what you're saying, the sentiment that in terms of the efficiencies of money and the case of, you know, your next best alternative for gone, in effect, that I think I personally would always, I believe I can make that work harder than the bank can make me work for it, in effect. So that's the trade-off that I look at. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate you coming on. I know it was out of our original plan, original diaries, but this has been, I'm confused now. I believe this is episode 5 that was filmed, you know, a little backdated, but I'm glad to have got you on. Next week we have on the guys or the couple from Dungar Property, who do a lot of deals in South Wales, I believe, loads of BRRR. I think they've sourced, I think it's like 100 properties. So in terms of deal sourcing, if you're interested in that, that will definitely be one to log into next Sunday at 6 p.m. If you're listening to this later on Spotify, Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, etc., can you just confirm the spelling of your Instagrams, your YouTube, so people can log on and listen to it later, or just connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So it's just The Anxious Investor. So I think there's an underscore after the and anxious on Instagram.
Yeah, so it's the underscore anxious underscore investor.
I think somebody's already taken my name, so I need to find that person. Probably gonna charge me a bit for it.
We'll find them. This will be going up. It will be saved. It will be going onto the YouTube at some point. Like I said, if you're not already, make sure you follow us both. I've enjoyed this conversation so much that I'm going to start doing in-person interviews along with kind of in-person podcasts. So at some point, I'm going to try and if you don't say yes now, I'm just going to get all my followers to go and abuse you. You say yes so they can get you to come down, because I think it will be a really good conversation away from property, just about the importance of, particularly in this like generation entrepreneur, just protecting your mental health. But I'll let you go. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening, and we'll all catch up soon. Take care.
Take care, man. Thank you.